So here are my tips and my 2 cents to pass the exam. So it's just general advice. Probably some of this is obvious, some of it you just need to hear once. To me, the number one tip is practice makes perfect. So if you're new to AWS, it will take a lot of practice to understand how to work with AWS on a daily basis. So if you're new to AWS, this course probably gives you a massive head start into using AWS. If you feel confident, then do the exam. If not, don't rush. You have time. Just work on AWS, be confident, use IAM roles, deploy applications, and then when you're ready, you can take the exam. The exam recommends you really to have 1 or more years of hands-on experience. So there are things you can't fake. So up to you to see if you're ready or not to pass the exam. So what I say is practice makes perfect. And a feeling you might have right now is overwhelmed by the amount of knowledge I just threw at you, that you just learned. So it takes time to have knowledge. This is not the kind of course you do in 3 days. This is the kind of course that goes over weeks. And so, if you have a lot of acquired knowledge, but you don't think it's perfect yet in your mind, then start practicing and do the course one more time. It's a few hours, obviously, but it will really help you not to waste the exam cost afterwards. So really just practice. That's my advice. So if you want to practice, you may be like, how do I do this? Well, if you're in a company, then good, just work with your company. If not, then take one of your existing applications in whatever language you want. Try to deploy it manually in EC2. That'd be a good first step. Then try to deploy it on Elastic Beanstalk and have it scale with a load balancer and auto-scaling group. Maybe create a CI/CD pipeline for it, so you go all the way from your code to your artifacts to the deployment. Maybe you can try breaking down your application into several components and use SQS and SNS to decouple your whole application. If possible, if you use Java, Go, Python, Node, these kind of languages, then you can run it with AWS Lambda and its friends. So its friends of going to be DynamoDB, API Gateway, so that maybe involve a bit of refactoring, but it could be fun. And if you want to practice with the CLI and SDK, I would strongly recommend to have ideas like this. So for example, create a script or create a CLI or SDK script, right? Yeah, that will shut down your EC2 instances at night and start them in the morning. That's actually a fun project to do on your own. Or you can have one that automates snapshots of your EBS volumes at night, so they're always backed up once a day. And maybe an idea 3 is to list underutilized EC2 instances in one region. And maybe underutilized means CPU utilization less than 10%, so that you don't waste money on underutilized EC2 instances, for example. Again, just a bunch of ideas. You may have your own ideas based on your use case and what you do in your daily basis. But what I want to do is just give you leads onto practicing. Now for the exam, you're going to have questions and they're going to have multiple answers, sometimes one answer, sometimes more than one answer. And so most of these questions are going to be scenario based. And for all the questions, I would suggest to start by ruling out answers that you know for sure are wrong. So it's a really good way to start to getting started, because if you know something is wrong, then you eliminate it. And that's one less question you have to answer you have to think about. So for the remaining answers, you need to really think about which one makes the most sense. And honestly, I'll be very honest with you, there are very few tricks question. So don't overthink your whole process. Okay, if one answer, makes a lot of sense, then go for it. If one answer seems feasible but is very complicated and requires a lot of engineering, it's probably wrong. Sometimes there are 2 answers that are correct, but one really is easier than the other or make more sense. So really use your sound judgment. Try to think about how much effort it would be for you to implement whatever the question asks you to do, and make a decision based on that. But usually proceeding by elimination and then using your judgment and your knowledge really makes you go through most of the questions. Remember, there are very, very few trick questions, and the questions will have keywords that will indicate usually something that will be determining in the answer. For example, serverless probably means AWS Lambda and DynamoDB and API Gateway, that type of stuff. Now, the AWS white papers, they recommend you to read them. To be honest, it is 10 white papers of 40 pages. You may not want to read them all, but you should skim them. So there's a lot of white papers, it's security best practices. So using IAM roles, that kind of stuff, encryption, we've seen this. Then the well-architected framework, so around how you architect your applications, segregation of duties using RDS, Elasticache, etc. Architecting for the cloud, which is kind of the same thing. The CI/CD paper is going to be around, code build, code deploy, code pipeline, code commit. We've seen this in large. Microservices on AWS is going to be around AWS Lambda and also ECS, and also all these things to decouple your microservices and have them integrate with one another. Serverless architecture with AWS Lambda, I think we've seen a lot of it, and we've also seen the SAM framework, which will be discussed in there. Optimizing enterprise economics with serverless architectures basically explains you that if you go serverless, then you don't have to pay people to manage and do maintenance of your stuff, and so you save a lot of money. And on top of it, serverless means that you only pay for what you use, so you should be optimal in pricing. Now, containerized microservices on AWS. This is an advanced topic, but this is around ECS. Basically, it's saying, okay, use Docker and ECS to deploy microservices on AWS. Remember, the exam only is asking you about a high level of ECS, not a deep dive. Blue-green deployments, I've tried to place that everywhere alongside the course. There's going to be blue-green deployments on Beanstalk, maybe there's a bit of blue-green deployment on Lambda or API Gateway. All this stuff we've seen. Blue-green means basically testing the new version, the green version, while the blue version is still running, and then when we're ready, switching over from the blue version to the green version. Overall, I feel that we've explored the most important concepts in this course, but if you feel really strongly about one of these papers and you want to read about it, then go for it. I think they're very interesting, each of these papers. The one paper you might want to have a peek into is the blue-green deployments on AWS, just to have a quick look, but don't overthink it. The most of the questions, and probably all the questions, are going to be covered by this course already. Now, each service will have an FAQ, so frequently asked questions. So for example, for Lambda, it's /lambda/FAQs. And I think they're very important because FAQ cover a lot of the questions they will ask you at the exam, and they may help you confirm your understanding of a service or maybe shed some light on a doubt you may have. So definitely look at the service facts, especially the one you don't really understand. Now, lastly, it's really around community. So you need to get into the AWS community. You need to talk to other Amazon engineers. Talking to people really unlocks knowledge. At least for me, it does. So discuss with other people in the course Q&A. Definitely help other people answering their questions. And by answering their questions, this is how you learn. You learn by teaching. And you review questions, asked by other people. Definitely look at what other people's concerns were. Maybe they will help you. Maybe the answers will, again, teach you a few stuff. And do the practice test in this section just to see where you're at. You should read forums online if you're very curious, read online blogs, and also their local meetups to discuss with other Amazon engineers. Finally, if you're more of a YouTube person, there is a lot of reInvent videos that are quite nice. The reInvent is the AWS conference, and they have a lot of good content out there. Basically a presentation of their service and sometimes a little demo. So that's it really for the tips of what you need to do. I believe you're ready, but it's up to you to see how much more practice you want to have. But yeah, hopefully these tips help, and I will see you in the next lecture.